Oh yeah. I have forgotten before.
Oh, I know. I forgot until like halfway through these, and then like, wait, there's such great
I
content.
did one time where it was somebody I kind of knew, and we just like did this great improv interview, and it was so good and so fun. And then we didn't record it. And then we came back and we recorded it, and it wasn't the same.
I like the way you're like trying to fake it the second time around, right?
Because then you're trying to duplicate it, and it's not the same spontaneity.
Totally, yes. I absolutely hear that.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about all this. I'm excited for your slideshow and your information.
Yeah, I mean, I also today was getting into what's the mindsets around this stuff. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny, you're going to get the sneak peek because we're talking about this before the actual content, but I was like, oh, like really, what are the mindsets that I'm focusing on here? And like, how do I, there's a lot of like information, but information's information, right? It's like,
yeah,
information. It's really about changing the mindset that's around these things. That's really important. So,
well, and I think that your apps and how easy it is and how targeted it is to this audience is really important, you know?
Yeah.
I think most of the other apps, and you know better than me, just you have to say an amount.
Right.
That doesn't work for us, you know?
It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, that part of it too is I think that for wellness professionals, for basically like, so coaches, you know, like all of this, it basically is because our income goes up and down a lot, or just is really unpredictable. And you probably get a lot of different payments every single month coming in from different people. Sometimes it's a group thing, sometimes it's an individual thing, right? And so two parts of it is like it's really unpredictable, and then the second is there's just too many transactions to keep track of. It's not like you're getting paid once a month and it's the same dollar amount. It's much more variable than that, right? And I think that was some of my personal experience too, like why I was like,
absolutely. And I just talked to somebody today who was like, yeah, I had a 15K month last month, and this month is zero. So, you know, it's looking like zero so far.
That's right. Yes.
It can be that big of a fluctuation.
Absolutely.
It's not even like every month putting money. It's like more the quarterly goal or something, you know, or even broader than that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes there's seasonality. It's like, look, I just know that my business is slow in the summer, so I can't put $5,000 aside for something.
Oh, and then another thing too is and I can actually mention this too, is a part of the strategy is a fluctuating income account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because people think, oh, I can't do that because I have, you know, but if you put money in your fluctuating income account when you are flush, then you can have more space when you know, so.
Bingo. Exactly. It should move with you, right? It's like not something to struggle against. It should move with you.
Otherwise, you get into the feast or famine thing, and that can create all kinds of funky habits.
Totally. Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit too. It's like, again, in the mindset thing, I think willpower is overrated.
Oh yeah, and actually, you've got to tell my habits. They're going to eat it up because he just has all this scientific proof of everything that you said so far about what you're creating, why you're creating it, and how it works, and that too, because it doesn't work. It's like you're trying to push something that doesn't have to be pushed. When you can just like do one little thing at a time and evolve it and have a long-term sustainable growth and evolution instead of like temporary intensity that doesn't lead to actually progress.
Exactly.
Sabotage, you know.
Exactly. Yes. So Jenny, if you can hear us and if you're available, I would love to hear more about you. So where are you coming from, first of all? What do you do?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let's see, I was just setting up my ring light so that I could do video too.
Cool.
So let's see here. Yeah, I'm in Austin, Texas.
There she is.
Hi.
A little better. Woo, how you guys?
Good.
Doing good.
I just got back from running around. It's 100 degrees in Austin today. It's a weird thing. It's only for one day. Don't ask me. I think it's fine.
So I'm in California, and we're having a really weird thing too. Again, like my weird's probably a little less weird than your weird, but like I think this weekend we were in the 50s, which is still fairly nice here, but then we're going up to 87 degrees on Thursday. It's like boom, and then going right back down.
Wow.
That's exactly us, because we were like 80 yesterday and doing this today, and then it's going to be maybe 80 tomorrow or less than that, I think.
Yeah. And tell me what you do.
Pardon?
What do you do?
Oh, I'm an artisan jeweler, so I have my own designs, and I sell at local art markets and larger art shows, and still I've got a great website and I'm on Etsy, but just don't do that great online still. So I need help with SEO. I'm gotta find somebody to help me with that. But otherwise, I do very well, at my in-person shows. So
great.
Very
and
cool.
how did you hear about this class?
Hear about what?
This class?
I'm on your email list.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great. Glad you're there.
Yeah.
Were you in Snag? Was that how you heard about me?
No. Gosh, I think it was probably through somebody else. You probably been on somebody else's? Was it Janet LeBlanc?
Yeah, it was Janet. I almost said Janet. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Thanks
yeah, you know how one leads to another type of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's how this stuff works, right?
Right. Yeah, at some point I want to hire you to help me with some coaching.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm just still kind of in this catch-up phase right now.
Yeah, I'd love to support you.
Totally.
Learn about your jewelry. I'm like, oh, I want to see your jewelry.
I know too. I was like, maybe we can get a sneak peek of something.
Yeah, I don't even have anything on. It's at hotspicejewelry.com. So if you want to check that out.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. Yeah, during the, I've always been kind of serious about the jewelry, and I still, am in terms of what I make, right? But, when the shutdown happened, it's kind of like, well, doggone, let's lighten up. So I just decided to rebrand, and, everybody says that your brand is you. Your brand is you. So it's kind of like, all right. So I needed to reflect more of my personality and just lighten up a little bit,
I love it. Hey, Anne, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you guys?
Doing really well. We're just waiting a couple minutes and then we will get started.
Perfect. I'm doing the mom, maybe too much information. I'm doing the mom multitasking thing, so I'm going to pump on this call. So I'm not going to be on video, but it's lovely to see your faces.
You're welcome to be where you were at. Where are you and where are you calling from? Or not?
I'm based in California, but I'm happen to be in Indiana right now. So I'm
Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Y'all, I'll probably have to bump off here at about 4:30, 4:40 roughly.
Okay.
We will be recording this and sharing this too.
Yeah.
So if you
great.
watch the rest of the content, you can absolutely do
Cool.
that. Yes. And Anne, I was just going to say, like, I have been there. I have been what you're doing right now. I have been there.
Like, well, this is a call I don't need to be on video for, or that I don't necessarily have to speak on. So no one would probably otherwise have made it. But
I do love when it's all women too.
Yes.
Yes,
it's a little safer in that way.
Yeah,
exactly. I was like, I normally wouldn't point this out to everyone. It's fine. It's fine.
All good. Well, why don't we get started with just a little bit of an introduction? I know that we've got a few different parties that are coming together here, and so not all of us know each other. Jen, do you want to go first and just give your quick intro and background?
Yeah, great. So I'm Jen Ailey. I'm a business coach for holistic and creative entrepreneurs. I help with money mindset, habits, business, marketing, sales, strategies, planning, all that fun stuff that I used to resist myself. And I've learned all about business the hard way. And I love supporting creative and holistic entrepreneurs to thrive in business and to create more positive impact in the world.
And I'm Evelyn. So I am the founder of Ruby Money, which is it's your pocket CFO, and it's meant specifically for creatives, wellness professionals, independent professionals, consultants, etc. And my personal background, I was a design strategist as trade, and did that in the corporate world for a long time, but always kind of had the side hustle. And had my own experience when I went full-time with that. And like a lot of the things that Jen was just saying, like all those things that you just mentioned, I experienced firsthand the heavy emotions of them too. And I think that just made me realize that there's really not a system that is set up to help us, right? Like when you're an employee somewhere, there are rails to get on. There is a system that is made for you. But the minute that you set off on your own, you hang your own shingle, you got to recreate it. And like all of us have tried to recreate it and have probably felt miserable doing it. So that means we're not the problem, the system's the problem, right? And so that really sparked me to say, well, then F that, let me build the system. Just to be really blunt about it, like let me go ahead and build the system. And so that's what I'm setting out to do. We'll give you more details on with that. That's me personally. And so what we're going to do today is really talk about mindset and rules of the money game. And so Jen's gonna start us out and really dig into these different mindset issues. And then I'm going to dig in and say, like, how do you translate a lot of those mindsets and like into rules and into actions and habits that can really help you. So with that, Jen, take it away.
Great. So I'm really excited about this collaboration. I'm excited to learn more about what Evelyn has to share as well. And one of the things that I love that you mentioned systems. And one of the things that I thought of that being the most helpful around mindset is around mindset connected to habits. Because ultimately what we're talking about is our money relationship here and habits. So just a little bit of perspective on money relationship. So I see money as a relationship. I see that there's a connection between you and money. You've had it your whole life, and you get to cultivate and create and nurture that relationship in the ways that support you to grow and connect with money, everything from tracking it to saving it to investing it to making it to receiving it, all the aspects of your money relationship. And one of the things that I think is most interesting, so I'll be drawing a lot of what I'm saying from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, which is a really amazing book on creating habits. And one of the main things he says that I think is really interesting and helpful is that your identity is often why you don't change your habits. Because you may identify as somebody who's not good with money or not good at math or, doesn't get, not a morning person or like whatever the thing is, so if there's anything that you notice about that for yourself around money, just notice it and just say, okay, there's that thing I have, and just really let yourself just put it outside your head for a second and just notice that there's that piece that you may have a story about yourself that connects you to money in a negative way or positive way or a neutral way or whatever it is. And so today I'm challenging you to step into a new identity and stretching yourself into a new identity that is just a growth mindset of being possible. And you wouldn't, if you didn't have that already, you wouldn't be here. So I just want to name that, so then connecting to systems. So, it's really common for everybody to set goals and to have a goal. And like my experience with goals in 18 years of being a coach is that people often set a goal and don't meet it and sabotage themselves or judge themselves or whatever it is. And so I've always been a huge fan for many, many years, probably over 20 years, of setting small goals, like super tiny, little bitty, tiny atomic goals, like tiny. And so this is what Atomic Habits is all about too, is like these little tiny bitty things that add up and evolve your life into something that you want to create. So it's like, your action steps are reflecting the person you want to become. So your choices and your actions are creating the next version of yourself, in the moment, every time you're doing something. So, and this is counter to our culture, because our culture tells us to like go to the gym every day and work out for an hour, or like run a marathon and make that your thing, you know? But that is actually intensity over consistency. Mm. And the thing that James Clear brings in is consistency over intensity is more effective, more sustainable, and more impactful in the long run. So that is huge. And I think that, you know, a lot of times we think, okay, I have to get this $1 billion for retirement by the next year. So we set this thing in our heads and we try to go so far that we get overwhelmed and we don't do anything, or we feel like it's out of reach, or the how gets in the way. And so the consistent piece is just like, how can I take small steps to move toward where I want to be? So then with the how piece, it's not about the, so he says, James Clear says, forget about goals, focus on systems instead. This is such a huge paradigm shift. I mean, like, oh my God, like that's so counter to our culture and the way that all of us have learned, you know? So he said that setting a direction, a goal will help you set a direction, but systems are best for making progress. And he says a system, so a system of continuous small improvements. And it's funny because I wrote small here in all caps. So it's like big, but it's emphasized because the key there is small, you know? And then one of the things I just want to mention now, maybe come back to after Evelyn's time talking, is habit stacking. This concept is so brilliant because it actually, what it is it's taking a habit that you already have and it's adding a habit to it. So for example, if you make coffee every morning and it takes your coffee 5 minutes to brew, you can do, you know, jumping jacks or meditate, or like, you know, so it's literally just adding something to connecting to something, or after you do this, you do this, you know? And there's some things with some of the stuff that Evelyn's going to talk about that will make the system conducive to that too. Some of the ideas that she has. Yes, and then it's okay. So then, okay, I'm really curious about the idea of, you know, like how, for me, I've been meaning to do certain things with my money for many years, but I don't always do the thing or like put it somewhere. And so I've been in motion about it, researching, you know, planning, strategizing, learning. But I haven't been in action all the way with some aspects of what I want to create. And so this distinction, motion versus action, is a very common one as well. So this distinction from James Clear, you know, he talks about like being in motion is planning, strategizing, learning. Being in action is specifically behavior that will deliver an outcome. So it's like, the way I look at it is that you're looking at the map, you're planning a trip, and you're strategizing, and you're you know trying to figure out where to go and what to do, but you're not on the ground doing it. So that's only motion if you're planning, thinking, strategizing. But when you actually get into action, you're putting your boots on and you're walking on the trail, you know, or getting in your car and going on the road. So I love that distinction as well. So and then
I asked a question about this part.
Yeah.
So is the point that those two things are both necessary, or that like we get caught in one versus the other?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm getting most out of this is just getting caught in the motion. And that motion is not action. Because I think sometimes we think the motion is action because we're thinking about it, you know, but it's not, you know, it's just planning and strategizing. It's valuable and there's a time for it, but it can't go on forever because it's not the same as action. So it's really, the distinction really helps to say, okay, what am I in, you know, am I in motion or am I in action, you know? Yes. And then, so then the other thing I want to share is about, it's about mindset around money, saving money, and planning for long term. And so there's two things here. One is the perception of like, because I feel like when we start to save money or put money away and put money in an investment, we may think I have less now if I do that. But the truth is that you still have the money and you have more for tomorrow. So it's a shift of like what you're creating, you know. And I just took a 2-week trip to Florida where I was staying with a friend part of the time in a retirement community. And there's nothing about like being around a bunch of people in their 70s and 80s to like make you think about retirement and how you want to live in retirement. So that was really interesting for me because I was like, okay, like yeah, I can actually see this, you know. So that was interesting for me. It's interesting timing, you know, for me to like take this step for myself. And then one more concept from James Clear real quick is that somehow tying instant gratification to a new habit. So for example, he gives the example of if he gives the example in the book about saving for a leather jacket. So instead of an account that's for the leather jacket, and like if you don't get a latte for $5, then you can put that into the account, you know. So that gives you a sense of not just saving money. It's like, okay, I'm gonna get this and I'm gonna like not do this and do this instead. And so I think that's an interesting piece to tie, just finding a way to tie instant gratification to a new habit. And I don't know what that looks like for you, and that may be something we can talk about at the end again to figure out like how that could work. But I feel like that was such a really helpful thing because I feel like that's the way our brains work, because we want instant gratification. We want the latte, not to say for the leather jacket in a way, but if you make it specific, like for me, I could think about a specific goal for retirement. You know, if I wanted to, for example, I want to have a treehouse studio before retirement. And so I can just think, oh, this is my treehouse, you know, that kind of thing. It's like whatever motivates you. So I feel like that's a really helpful tip as well. And then one more thing before I turn it over to Evelyn is that, and we talked about this a little bit before we got on here, which is about like fluctuating income. So fluctuating income is a common thing for an entrepreneur. Seasonal income is also a common thing. And the fluctuation can be really high and low. It can be slightly variable. It just depends on what's happening, of course. And you know, we're a unique bunch because we do have this in our businesses, and we can't set aside just a certain amount every month for certain things because our income fluctuates. But doing it when it comes in, as opposed to waiting, is a huge thing. And one thing I just want to mention is the idea of fluctuating income account. So that when there's money that's beyond your expenses for the month, you put that money into a fluctuating income account so that you can have spaciousness and you can have like more than what you need, you know. So it's like, you know, here's the income, here's what you need. If you make more than that, then you skim this off the top, you put it in the fluctuating income account, and that grows so that if there's a lean month, you can have this to fill the gap. And it's a super, super simple concept. But I remember the first time I heard it, like probably over 10 years ago, and I was like, oh my goodness, like that's so genius, because we don't talk about that enough, you know, like that's something that is really helpful to think about and consider. And I used to have like 12 different bank accounts for different things. I have like 8 now, maybe, because I like to have my money in different places with intention, so that I know I just putting that intention is kind of like a little bit of instant gratification in a way, because I'm channeling that money into certain things that I want to nurture. So yeah. So anybody have any questions to clarify anything that I've mentioned, or anything you want to add to that before we go to Evelyn? I know it's a lot. I'm kind of a fire hose teacher sometimes, so I hope it's digestible, and you can always watch this again as well. And ask questions at any time. You can email me.
I have put in our chat window, just like as you've been giving these awesome tips, I've been writing them out for everybody. I'm curious, maybe for each of us, just to take a look at that, or even just like pause for a minute and say, out of everything that you've just heard, rapid fire, right? But it's like everything that you've just heard, what's one thing that's sticking with you? What's one thing that's sticking with you?
Yeah, I'm curious about that. Like, what do you remember? Like one thing that stood out to you that you felt when I talked about it?
Well, for me, I know it's because I watched your recent video about the beginning of the book, and you went over, I think, some of the things you just talked about, and this idea of changing your habits. And like, I have a tendency to wait a little bit too long before, say, I need to actually leave to go somewhere, or I need to, for instance, I have to put in orders, you know, before a certain time for my order to be shipped out that day, you know, as an example. And sometimes I seem to always be like getting like the last 15, 20 minutes, and then it's the last 10 minutes. And then it's like, oh my God, nail biting. Am I going to get the order in on time? You know, that's just one thing that's been yesterday and today. And this thing about somehow adding in more, and this is just the habits thing. This is what I'm talking about. I'm just using it as an example. And so I'm, for instance, yesterday, I was catching myself, telling myself, all right, change your habits, do it, get up, you know? Anyway.
Well, and it's tricky because that doesn't really work. It's like it has to be, because there has to be a why. Like if you yell at somebody or yell at a dog, it won't do what you want it to. So that voice of forcing, it's like a, you know, it has like a response of like, you know. So it's like, how can you coax yourself into evolving it, and what would it give you to create more spaciousness with time? I used to do the same thing. I was late all the time for years. And so it's like, you know, what does it give you to feel more peace and calm and deeper breaths in your body? And, you know, maybe it's just simply making a choice to prioritize what you need to prioritize, and that's it, you know, or to let go of deadlines that are stressing you out.
That's the alternative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And to set deadlines that are reasonable for you, just like setting goals with money or something that are reasonable and reachable, that they're smaller than usual. It's a total brain shift. Yeah, I just saw your face do that, you know? Yeah.
I'm curious for others. So we've got, and I'm sorry that I can't see your name. It just says Bloom Embodied Well-Being, which I love. I would love to know your name too.
Yes, apologies. I have two different accounts and I don't really pay attention to which one I sign in on.
Oh, yeah.
My name is Jillian, and yeah, the one that stands, I mean, 3 of them stand out to me, but for right now in this season of life with the awareness that I'm playing with is really the motion versus action. Which I realize I get caught up in a lot as a perfectionist, or as like a trying to recover perfectionist. It's very deep-seated, and it's something I continue to work on. But yeah, I notice that I get caught up a lot in motion, and I feel good being in that place, because I'm like, oh, I'm planning, I'm building a strong foundation, I'm clarifying, you know, what I want to bring to it, I'm keeping some integrity, but then the rubber isn't meeting the road and I'm getting frustrated, and it's like, oh, because I'm not actually taking action. And what I've realized kind of ties into that is making smaller goals, like taking action steps that are less overwhelming to my nervous system in this new process, as I'm gaining more confidence and really like claiming my self-worth and my value and what I'm doing. I think that it's easy to my experience is I've been coached to do things that are too big for me, and I've been having a lot of resistance, and it's been making me really doubt myself, instead of being like, no, that's actually just too big for you. Let's just take a more bite-sized piece instead of trying to shove the whole pizza in your mouth, and getting, you know, a little too, there's some urgency that plays into it, so it's all raveled together. But that really really jumps out at me, of being like, oh, okay, I think it's important to stay in motion and plan and strategize. And can I also be taking small action steps to just, move in that direction and start taking more steps and less leaps. I tend to be someone who, up until this experience of starting a business, has been quite okay with leaping. I love leaping. I like the adrenaline rush, but in this scenario, it's not working for me. And that's been a real eye opener. I'm like, wait, I like to do this, but I don't have the right, I don't have the other, I think you talked about when you're as an employee, you have things to land in a little bit more. Yeah. And right now I'm just like free falling.
You're seeing a lot of head nodding here. I think probably because we all have been independent and all like empathize, right? So we've likely all felt similar things, and I'm certainly nodding because I'm like, yes, so many of the things that you're saying around like the emotion of what it feels like especially when you're new to starting a business, and then having that confront some of what Jen was saying about identity. Right? It's like, who do we think that we actually are? And like when we try new things that actually, push on that a little bit, it brings all of these different tips that Jen's been saying really into the foreground, because we're just not on a track anymore.
Yeah. And I think it can be surprising. I've seen it with some friends, and I've experienced it a lot. I'm kind of like, whoa, like I'm surprised that it feels so challenging. And then there's a whole storyline with that of like, oh, there's something wrong with me, instead of like, oh no, this is just an entirely new
That's right
that you're exploring.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think like from a former teacher perspective, like in student, like and perfectionist kind of vibe for me, like I feel like sometimes I feel like I should know something, or I should have known something, but like we're not taught how to do all these things in business. So we literally have to learn new skills and new things and new ways of thinking and new structures and new systems. It's a whole world. And then we have to evolve them as our business evolves.
Yeah.
So it's not like we might cruise for a while, but then we go to the next level. So now let's hear from Evelyn about how to take some of the tips that she has to take our businesses to the next level.
Yes. So we're thinking about mindsets, habits, how to actually make things really small, and take a deep breath, because what I'm talking about is things like taxes and retirement, which usually is not associated with like, oh, let me just think small and take a tiny step. It's usually associated with okay, that's either really painful, or it's really tedious, or it's overwhelming, or I can't think about that, or I don't have enough money, or I could go on and on, right? And so I think there's almost this like, how do we immediately start practicing these small habits when we're talking about something and a topic that tends to feel really overwhelming to many of us. So let me go ahead and I will share my screen. So the first thing that I wanted to do is just share with you, like when I was thinking about mindsets, and like, I also think it's really important to start there. There's one thing in particular that really stood out to me, and it was this. So pay yourself first. Pay yourself first. Now, I don't just mean this in the fuzzy way, right? I don't just mean this as in like, oh, let me think about myself and take a moment to think about myself. I actually mean it really, really practically as a habit and as a system, and as like these little small steps that move you towards where you want to go. Okay, let me just break that down. So pay yourself first. Usually, and how I did for like the first year when I was independent, this is how things work. You get paid, and you sold something, or like you did just a chunk of work, somebody paid you. So rock on, that feels good. Then the first thing you do is you pay expenses. You think about your business expenses, you think about your household expenses, like expenses. So you pay everything out. And then after expenses, you look at what's left over and you say, oh, how much is for me? How much, by the way, did I have to save up for taxes? And maybe I didn't. So I'm caught with unexpected bills. And usually the amount that's left over is just less than we expected, less than we want, less than we might value ourselves at. Okay. So that likely feels very familiar. That's the past. So thinking about changing habits and changing mindset, I think a really powerful thing is to change your mindset and your literal habits to pay yourself first. So what that means is same thing, you get paid by a customer, or by a client or a client. The first thing you do is you set aside money for yourself. That's the first thing that you do. Okay. Then set aside money for taxes. I'm going to be like a proponent of that one too, right? It's like you don't want to be caught unaware of that one. So set aside money for yourself, set aside money for taxes. Like set aside those things and then pay expenses with what's left over. That's a pretty fundamental habit change, okay, than what a lot of us might be used to. Now, what happens out of that, I think, is twofold. The first one is you actually get a lot more emotional peace from it. Like first from taxes, you're not going to be caught with surprises. But then more importantly for yourself, like you know that you are valuing yourself and you're putting aside money for yourself first. Right? The second is, I think that the money will be there then when you need it. This almost goes to that fluctuating income account that Jen was talking about. And it's like, if you set aside the money for yourself first, it's going to be there when you need it, whether it's for something that you're investing in for the longer term, or whether it's for an emergency and it catches you by surprise. Right? But that money is going to be there when you need it. I think there's a last thing that's on here, and this happened from my own experience too, that you will be surprised at how then your expenses shrink, or at least like they start to move with how much you actually have available. So again, what it's moving from is expenses first, and that's static, right? That doesn't change. And then like, oh, what's left over is like wiggly. What that changes to is pay yourself first. That becomes static. And then what shifts and moves is actually expenses.
So I just want to say also your income can go up.
Oh, for sure. I know. I'm saying the downside. I shouldn't just focus on the downside.
Because like, you know, when you honor yourself and you value yourself and you're creating that peace, and you and money have peace together, there's not a push-pull like stressor as much. And so it's like you're creating a container to receive more.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is a combination of the mindset, right, of paying yourself first, and literal action, right? So this is motion and action already, right? It's like you're actually doing both of those things. So how do you actually do this? This is getting really practical now. I've got to admit to all of you, I'm a total money nerd. I know I'm a designer, but I love spreadsheets. Like I'm a total money nerd. And so things like algebra, I love when they make things really happy and simple. And so the way that you pay yourself first, especially for all of us that have fluctuating income, is just percentage budgets. Okay? And so what this means is when your income goes up, you set aside a percent of yourself, and that's a high amount when your income goes up. If your income is low for a certain month, it's the same percent. So that's the consistency piece. Right? It's the same percent, but then you're just setting aside less. So again, how much you are paying yourself, how much you're setting aside for taxes, how much you're setting aside for retirement, all of that is at a set percentage. That's consistency. But because it's a percentage, it actually moves with you because our income as independents does go up or down. Okay. So the main like mindset thing around here too is, I think oftentimes when we think about savings and like the content that's out there about savings, and even the word budgets, which is really not my favorite, it has us go into this scarcity mindset, and it really has us go into this place of, oh, I need to rely on willpower. And this is like, again, for your analogous situation, Jen, you're like, oh, I just have to do it. I got to change, right? And like, I could see it in your fist. You're like, willpower. But what we're saying is it's actually not about willpower, right? It's actually setting up these systems that step by step draw you towards that. And so like a very specific example for paying yourself first is set a consistent percentage. That's the system, right? Set a percentage, then you're not relying on your willpower to save. Right? You're relying on the system and you're relying on this automated habit. So the rest of my job today is like combination of providing a little bit of this foundational knowledge, which again, I'll probably bucket into the motion category, but then really pairing it with action, right? Like how do you actually take steps on this? And in particular, as I mentioned, this is about taxes and retirement. So my goal is to shift you from this mindset of I hate paying taxes and I can't save for retirement to I can save on taxes and invest in my future. Okay, so that's the mindset shift. I'm going to be giving you a lot of different information just again, so you understand and know the options and the details and basics of taxes and retirement. All right, so the first one is taxes for you being an independent with fluctuating income. All right, so all of us have income that goes up and down with every single month. Right? That's actually what makes it really difficult to know how much you actually need to pay in taxes. There's a couple of other things I just want you to know that now that you're independent. So if you have your own business, your taxes are likely more than when you were a W-2 employee. I know it like sucks to hear that, but it's actually true, right? The actual tax rate that you pay is likely higher. Then your taxes are not withheld for you. When you had an employee, an employer, a company, every time that you got a paycheck, they already took your taxes out. And likely they probably took a percentage out for retirement too, right? So they did that all before the money even hit your account. And they did that literally every single time that you're paid. That doesn't happen for you when you're independent. You get paid the gross amount, like the top amount. Gross literally means the top line amount. So you have to do the withholding yourself for taxes. Then you also need to pay taxes every quarter. I did not know this when I first started out, but yes, you need to pay taxes every single quarter. And quarterly taxes, by the way, are due for Q1 on April 18th. So that deadline is coming up pretty soon. So just know, like, there's just some of the major differences that just make taxes for us as independents quite different than if you were an employee somewhere. Quarters, I'm just giving you the dates of this one, so you have them in your head. And I put quarter-ish because, come on, government, like a quarter is not even a quarter. Yeah. So the first one actually is 3 months, right? And it's due on April 18th. The second payment's due on June 15th. It's actually only after 2 more months. Like, it doesn't really make sense, but it's how the government works. So it just makes it complicated again, right? How do you remember these dates that are quarter-ish? It's April, it's June, it's September, and then January of next year, right? Those are the 4 quarter-ishes that the government requires you to pay. Now, you always have this question of how much do I actually need to pay in quarterly taxes? There's some rules of thumb about this one. I'm just going to give you some ranges so you know this information. What I've usually seen is your taxes range from 20% up to 45%. Those are big numbers. Okay. And this is, again, when you might have that lump in your throat, like, I didn't know that, or I didn't save for that. That's fine, right? It's like we're going to acknowledge that. We're going to move us towards the mindset that we actually need to be in, but know that information, right? Your taxes typically are 25% up to 20% up to 45% of your income. Those are made up of 3 big buckets. So the first one is your federal income tax. We're all familiar with this. It's like any income that you earn, you pay tax on that. That's the federal income tax. The second bucket is state. So states really range in terms of the income tax that they charge you. You can have 0. Some of you are lucky enough to be in those states, or you can be 13.3%. Thanks, California. Right. So like the range varies a lot. It depends, again, on what state you're in. The last category of your taxes is self-employment taxes. That's made up of 2 things. That's made up of your Medicare and your Social Security payments. Now, you actually did pay into this if you were ever a W-2 employee as well. It's just that the amount changes. And this is why your taxes are likely higher when you're self-employed. So it is actually double the amount it's double the amount. It's around 15.3% for us as self-employed people. But when you hear self-employment tax, you think like, what is that going towards? Am I just getting taxed because I'm self-employed? Like literally it's going towards Medicare and Social Security. Right. Yeah, Jen.
Just to clarify, so it's not we're being charged more, it's just that our employer is not paying it, so we are.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yes, that's exactly.
Clarify that.
Yes. Like when you had a company that was your employer, they were paying the other half of it. But now the government splits you into two personalities, employee and employer, and so like you get to pay both. Congrats. Yeah. Okay. So then the amount also, I should tell you, varies on your income, right? So that's why it's a range. It's on a marginal rate, and like it increases for every increment of dollar you earn. So like for the first $10,000 you earn, you pay 10%, right? For the next X amount that you earn, you pay 12%, all the way up to 37%. And that's just for federal taxes. Right? So how much you earn, what state you're in, and then finally, your filing status. All that means is, are you married, filing jointly, separately, head of household, single, right? Those are the different tax filing status. So those are the variables that go into defining how much your taxes actually are. Again, you don't have to know that on an active basis. It's just like trying to give you some foundational knowledge, like the motion piece of this kind of stuff, the research piece of this. So then rules of thumb about how much to actually pay in quarterly taxes. So the first rule of thumb on this one is you can look at what you paid in overall taxes last year, divide that by 4, and pay that amount. Okay. So I actually think that is a perfectly fine rule of thumb if your income is consistent year over year. Because if your income is consistent, that means your tax burden is going to be about the same. So if you pay a quarter of that, you're going to be all right. Okay. But if you have a banner year, or if you have a slower year, it actually doesn't work that well anymore. Like you're going to still end up with a really big bill at the end of the year, or you're going to end up overpaying, which is just kind of a waste of your money. Okay, so that's one rule of thumb that usually works well if your income is steady year over year. The second one is you can ask your CPA. Now, this is a funny rule of thumb because a lot of people do end up doing this, and this is what tax professionals do. Right? So they're going to give you a very clear, accurate number. Clearly, the downside is you're paying for their time, and typically that's quite expensive. And so most of the individual like solopreneurs and small business owners that I know actually don't do this. They don't ask a CPA to do this and have a real-time number for them because it's just not worth the cost of it. Then the last hint that I have is still like a rule of thumb. I'm going to admit it's also not great. It's just you actually look at how much income you earned this quarter. You multiply that by 4, right? That's called annualizing it to what you might earn over the whole year. Calculate the percent taxes that you might pay. Multiply that by the total amount, divide that by 4, ta-da. So lots of math, right? Like if you want to do that math, it's fine. And again, I don't actually think that rule of thumb is really great. So I'm kind of leaving you with the scratching your head thing because I'm saying, hey, here's some rule of thumbs and none of them are great. And I think that's exactly my point. And yes, this is part of the pitch for Ruby Money because Ruby Money can calculate for you how much you can and should set aside for your taxes based on all real factors. But I am pointing this out because it just is one of those things that is set up as a task you need to do for the government, pay quarterly taxes, but there is no really good way, no system, no rails put out there for you to do it and to calculate it. Right. So what happens if you don't pay quarterly? So what the government does is they will charge a penalty by back calculating how much they think you should have paid every quarter, compare that to how much you actually paid, and then charge you interest every single quarter. All right, so that's how penalties work. I do want to clarify here too, like some people get really, really nervous and they say like, oh my, like I did not pay my quarterly taxes. Am I going to get audited? Am I going to go to jail? You're not going to jail, okay? Like that's not what's going on here, right? And like nobody wants scrutiny on their taxes. So obviously like the less attention that you draw, especially if you're earning a lot of income, that might be a good thing, but you're not going to jail. I don't think this is going to call for an audit. What it really means is that you're just paying more money at the end of the day in taxes. Okay, I'm actually going to pause there for a second and just anyone have questions about this quarterly tax thing, because it is knowledge-wise, right? Questions on this. It is one of the biggest differences of what we have to do as independent professionals versus as a W-2 employee. Okay, if not, I will move on, but also please feel free to put that in the chat window. I will see it and I will answer it. Okay. So now moving towards like the mindset of, oh, I can save on taxes and invest in myself in the future. So how can you save on taxes? People know about deductions. Like everyone's always saying like, how can I capture the most deductions? So I put a short list on here just so you know some of the main things that as an independent professional, you can set aside as deductions on your taxes. So healthcare insurance, dental premiums, those are tax deductible. If you are working with any tax professional or legal professional, like any kind of help for your business in that kind of way, that's also tax deductible. If you have coaches, if you're working with Jen, right, these things are actually tax deductible as well. Home offices. So home offices, thankfully, the government made this a lot more simple, that it's not like you have to calculate specifically how much you used in your, like how much you use of your home resources. Basically what they set out is a really simple rule that you take the square footage in your home that is dedicated towards your business. It might be a room, might be just a small space, square footage, multiply that by $5. And that's your deduction amount. Up to $1,500, right? So that's actually how the home office deduction works. Travel.
But I thought you had to have a door, like it has to be a room or a separate space. It can't just be like a corner of a living room or something like that.
It actually can be. It can
really?
be part of a different space. Yes. Yes. And that was like part of the simplification of the tax code, which is great. Maybe I don't have confirmation of this, but I hope that it was in response to some of the COVID stuff that was happening, because a lot of us.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yes. Then travel. So travel, if you're traveling for work, that is tax deductible. If you have business meals, that is also fully tax deductible. That is also a change. It used to be only 50% deductible. Now it's 100%. So these are all like the more common kinds of deductions that you can have as an independent solopreneur. But I think that there's one, like these are all great. Maybe this is just saying, but it's an and. Remember, this is all money that's already spent and out of your pocket, right? That's the thing about expenses and deductions. I actually think the best way to save on taxes is something else. It's retirement. It's retirement. And Jen and I have said this before, like the reason why retirement is the best way to save on your taxes is because the money is still yours and you get to deduct it on your taxes. Right? The money is still yours. It is like yours. It's growing. It's investing in your future, and you're saving on taxes now. It's the only thing that does that as a win-win. Okay. So a couple of things for definitions here. So what do I even mean by retirement being tax deductible? So any money that you make as contributions towards your retirement account, it has to be a dedicated retirement account, lowers your taxable income for the year. So I'll just give an example. Let's say for 2021, I personally had $100,000 as my taxable income. If I put $10,000 into a retirement account, that lowers my taxable income to $90,000. So I'm only taxed on $90,000. That's how deductions work. Okay, so the lower your taxable income, the lower your taxes. Now, very specifically for independents, self-employed people, retirement is the best way to save on taxes because you can set aside a really large chunk of money pre-tax. There's a specific kind of account. I'm going to describe that next. But the way that you do this is you can set aside up to $58,000 last year. That's the number for 2021, and actually up to $61,000 for 2022. I'm telling you the 2021 number because you are actually still able to set that amount aside until April 18th of this year. Okay. So like, I know the calendar year has passed, but you are actually still able to set that money aside. One last thing, just as a definition, like if you're not familiar with retirement accounts, what are retirement accounts? Like retirement accounts are just investment accounts. They're typically held at a brokerage. A brokerage is like Schwab, Vanguard, Fidelity, Guideline, Elvest. Like these are all names of brokerages. And what they do is they invest your money into stocks, bonds, and other assets. Right. So these typically are going to be investment accounts that are always set aside specifically for retirement. Now, let me give you details about what this one account is in particular. All right, so this is the SEP IRA, SEP-IRA. You might think that stands for self-employed. I wish it stood for self-employed. It actually doesn't. It stands for something like Simplified Employee Pension Plan, which is ridiculous. Again, this government thing. Like they named this something that you would think is not for you, but it is literally created for self-employed people. I think it is very low admin. You can open it online, typically at any of these brokerages, in about 3 minutes. This is how you get that high contribution amount. Now, really specifically, the amount for you personally that you can set aside is a maximum 20% of your net income. So you take how much you've earned, subtract out expenses, that net number, 20% of that is the maximum amount that you can set aside into this SEP IRA. Okay. Now, again, you can do this until April 18th of this year for 2021. So you're not too late on that one. And your contributions are tax deductions for 2021. Another note on this one, if any of you are also working at a company and have W-2 salary, you still can take advantage of this. So you can have a company sponsored in retirement plan. Usually they're 401ks. That's like the name of them. You can still, in addition to that, have a SEP IRA.
And then the limit then is 20% of your W-2?
No. So it is still 20% of the net income for your business that you can set aside into the SEP IRA. That is still the maximum that you can set aside into your SEP IRA.
Into the SEP, okay.
Yeah. Correct, yes. Yeah. Okay, the other account that some of you might have heard about before is just the IRA, right? That does stand for individual retirement account. These are personal accounts that anybody, it doesn't matter where you are employed. It doesn't matter if you are independent. It doesn't matter if you are W-2. You can set aside money into an IRA also. The maximum that you set aside into an IRA is $6,000. So it is a lower contribution amount. That's a maximum, but it is also a great account. You have two different options here. One of them is tax deductible now. So you get that tax benefit now, and that is called the traditional IRA. One of them is tax deductible or tax-free later. What that means is you still pay taxes on the money now that you put into the retirement account. That grows over time. And when you take the money out in retirement, that is tax-free. So if anything has grown over time in that account, that growth is tax-free. That account is called the Roth IRA. Now, you can have all of these things. So yes, you can have a Roth IRA, and you can have a SEP IRA, and you can have an employer-sponsored 401k. The one specific rule on this one is if you have both the SEP IRA and either traditional or Roth IRA, the combined total of those things is $58,000 for last year, $61,000 for this year. Okay, so I just dumped out a ton of different knowledge. Again, this is all just foundational knowledge, but now it's all about, remember, this mindset about how do I move from knowledge to action, and how do I break it down into really, really simple steps. So this is literally why we created Ruby Money, right? And it's to help you pay yourself first, save on taxes now, and invest in your future, right? So Ruby Money is a system that literally puts in these little tiny bets and tiny steps every single time you get paid. So what are we and how do we work? So we are an app, and first thing you do is you get a personalized tax plan. So remember, it's really hard to know how much to set aside in your quarterly taxes. We determine the right number for you, the right percentage for you. That is based upon your income, your filing status, and where you're located. So you're going to get that plan first. Then the second is you set aside percentages. You can say, yes, I see that your recommendation is I should set aside 30% every single time for my taxes. And I want to set aside 15% towards my retirement. Or like, how can you have that retirement goal be somewhere that it's a small bet? It's a bet, right? But it's a small bet and it's a tiny step that's moving you forward towards the habit that you want to build. You set those rules. And then literally every single time that you're paid, we will automatically set aside that money for taxes and retirement. So you're going to get a text that says, Jillian, congrats. Like, you just got paid today. There's $3,000 in your bank account. Do you want me to set aside the $800 for taxes and the $200 for retirement? Text me yes, or just say skip. And so you always still have control, and you have the option to say, just not this time around, or let me go in and change my rule because it actually feels like too big for me. It's too big of a bet for me. Let me actually make it something that's a smaller bet to make me to get me to where I want to go. That's literally how Ruby Money works. Okay. So what I call this is, it is your pocket CFO, right? It is really helping make this money game work for you. I'll give a little bit of my background and where we are in this business too. We started this about a year ago. And our intention, again, was from our own experience. Me and my co-founder, that's who the hour is. We were independents also. And I think we're overwhelmed and emotionally almost embarrassed at like the back office stuff because it was hard. It was really hard. And we realized there's tons of people, a lot of women in particular, that struggled with this, which told me it wasn't about us. It was actually about the system. And so we want to create a system that really helps you take these small steps towards building the habits that you want. And we've released an app. It right now is free because we are in beta. Okay? And so all this functionality of actually calculating your taxes, of setting aside your taxes, of setting aside your retirement money, having that automated, getting text every time you're paid, which also feels really good. That's that positive reinforcement too. That is all free for you right now. And what we're asking for in return is literally your feedback. Right? It's like, what I really want to know is, how can this work for you? What else do you want me to build? Tell me what doesn't work for you so I can fix it. And I mean that truthfully and honestly, right? It's like, Jen knows this, right? Like, she's been playing with it. And like, that's what I asked for. I ping her, I was like, hey, you want to spend 15 minutes on the phone? Just like, show me how it's working for you, right? Because that's really, really valuable to me at this stage of our company. So if you are interested in this, you can go to our website. That's just www.rubymoney.us. Or you can actually go to the App Store and search for Ruby Money Taxes and Retirement. And that's just Ruby Money, and we are Ruby Money Taxes and Retirement, and you can download us and give us a try. It'll take you less than 5 minutes to actually get set up fully. Again, all of that is included, that you get your individual tax plan, know how much to set aside for quarterly taxes. We are actually building and releasing this week the ability to pay your taxes through us too, which is because if any of you have been to the government website or are still sending in checks and the vouchers and stuff in the mail, it's really painful. So like, one click, let me have you just pay through the app. So that's going live this week. Yes, I love that you're wowing that one too. Actually.
Yeah. Because all that stuff is such a hassle, and it's so hard to figure out or remember the voucher, not sure, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh my God, it's all there. Boom, it comes in, boom, done. I love that.
Right. And we'll remind you when your quarterly taxes are due too, because again, it's quarter-ish, right? And I was like, why? Like, who told you needed to remember June 15th, right? But yeah, we'll remind you. We'll remind you. And the money will be there if you've automatically set it aside every single time you're paid. So again, it'll be super simple. Just with one click, you'll be able to pay that. And if you set aside money for retirement, like at the end of the year, when your tax professional is doing your taxes, you're like, I actually have lowered my taxes significantly. So I can save on taxes, and I have invested in myself, and I will pay myself first. Like, this is all that's the big mindsets, but there really are these systems and these steps that help get you there. So that's us. I did chat in our window, our website again, it's just rubymoney.us. I would love you to check us out and please give me feedback. That is the most valuable thing to me. And otherwise we are at time. I'm happy to stay on for a few minutes, and Jen, if you're available to stay on for a few minutes too, if any of you have any questions, we can keep chatting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Christine. I'm excited for you to try it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a
So
few
fun.
questions. I'm so glad I popped onto this. I started my business last year and I did none of the things. I also didn't really make money last year, so I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out. But I'm curious, when you pull this money, where is it stored? Are you coordinating with accounts and do you mind pulling down the share screen so I can see?
Oh, yes, sorry. Faces. Yes.
Yeah, where is the money stored? Are you coordinating with us with accounts that we have to create to put it into? And do you recommend pulling that money and putting it into like a savings account that's accruing interest?
Right. Yeah. So this is like, I'll break down how the product actually works. So the first thing that you do is you actually link your business checking account. So that's wherever you actively are receiving payments from your customers and your clients. So you'll link that to Ruby Money, and that's how we get an active scan of when you get income, when you've earned income. Okay. Then when we sense that you actually got paid, and if you set aside like a 25% rule for taxes and a 10% rule for retirement, like we will text you. And if you say yes, we'll put that money into a cash account for you. It is held at a bank. So we have actually partnered with a bank. So it is FDIC insured up to $250,000. It's the same kind of security and requirements that any bank has. That's the bank that we have partnered with. So the money sits there for taxes and for retirement until you want to make it work for you. Right? So, and those are slightly different what they mean. For taxes, work for you means literally you can press a button and send it over to the government, right? And so it's super easy to do it from Ruby because then you don't have to transfer the money out anywhere. On the retirement side, what we've heard from a lot of our customers is they already have relationships with brokerages and they don't want a new one. Like nobody wants yet another new account that they have to handle that way. So we'll keep the money in this account for you, but you link it to your brokerage. So whenever you're ready to push that money over, you can say, yep, I've got mine at Vanguard. I've got mine at Guideline. I'm just going to send the money over and start investing it there. Part of the reason why we're leaving that flexible too is that you can determine what cadence feels good. Some people actually want to do that every single month, and that's great. Some people want to do it every quarter. It's like, I'm doing my taxes now. Let me do my retirement now. Again, these are just the steps that get me towards my goal. Other people really want to wait until the end of the year and wait until their CPA gives them like the exact number. So by storing it in this account that's always flexible, like you can choose any of those things. The last piece that I'll add here is because it is held in an account that is your account, it is under your name, you can always transfer the money out back to your linked checking account. Right? So life happens, right? And so if you suddenly need the money for something, or if just your circumstances change, transfer the money back. It's all there for you.
Okay, so it's all accessible.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. This is awesome. I actually have a pretty big women's group with a lot of entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs. So I'll be excited to drop this in there.
I would love that.
Yeah, because we talk about money quite a bit. And I know everybody's like, what the fuck are we doing? What's going on? Again, it's like we're all in business school unexpectedly because we wanted to be entrepreneurs.
Yes. And we shouldn't have to recreate this. I think that's like, I'm going to get on the pedestal of this again, right? It's like, I both really, really empathize with the emotion because I've been there. And this is my anger piece of it, right? It's like, if we're all feeling like we don't know what the fuck is going on, we are not the problem, right? Like we need to stop blaming ourselves for that. Like that is not our fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I so appreciate that. My other question is just out of curiosity, if either of you ladies either work with or as, I don't know that either of you work as CPAs, but have anyone you can recommend that works with like small business startups and entrepreneurs, because I essentially I need to figure out what I need to know and what I need to do and how to, manage all this stuff. And I've taken like quite a handful of classes and whatever, and it's just become clear that I need just one-on-one guidance to look at specifically what I have going on, because my transition from like employer to unemployment to starting a business, like it's all become a clusterfuck in 2021, and I was just like, so I just wanted to see if you might have any resources you might be able to share or recommend.
There's two things that I'll offer first. So yes, like we actually do have a network of tax professional CPAs that we work with. They've helped us build our products to make sure that we're actually following tax rules and everything with it. But they do focus specifically on independents and self-employed. So I'm happy to refer you to somebody. And then the second is I'm also personally happy to just like hop on like a 15, 30-minute call with you, right? It's like, I think that I'm not going to come from any like, again, like the expert, I'm not going to be the tax professional telling you the rule. I'm just going to tell you from my own experience how I manage these different pieces. And all the things that you mentioned, I've also experienced in my world personally, right? So like, I'm very happy to sit down and like talk about that. I will tell you that like one of the reasons why I'm offering that too is that's actually not like, these different experts, like an attorney or a tax professional or even a bookkeeper, like they're fairly narrow in how they focus, right? And what I more often hear is, can someone just like talk to me about the overall playbook, right? And like how all the different pieces fit in together. None of those, like a tax professional is not going to do that with you. Like a tax professional is going to ask you questions and maybe tell you specific answers specifically about taxes and how to like lower your tax bill. And then a bookkeeper might tell you very specifically how to like document your transactions, right? And then an attorney is going to tell you something specifically about what business entity you might want. But like that was part of my struggle. And it's like, it's just super frustrating that I can't just go to one place.
Like holistic perspective.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah,
like
that's right.
And creative we're looking for that.
I do, Jillian, know some local people that I can also share with you. So if we can email about that too.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And I have a lot of women friends who are also starting businesses, and we're all in the dark. We're all like, I don't know, what are you doing? And everybody's like, are we going to get pinged? Because we're trying to piece it together, but it's not making sense, and we don't.
It's so common. So it's what everybody is doing, and that's why it's like, okay, how do I just stepping into getting support from people who know more than you do is all you can do, right? And then change what you're doing to do the best you can. I mean, I had years ago where I owed taxes all the time because I couldn't figure it out, so I just ended up paying them, whatever, Mm-hmm. So, and it was fine. I survived it.
Yeah, you didn't go to jail.
Go to jail. Yeah, I paid some interest, but I didn't even notice really, So
I just think I appreciate it's such a bigger conversation that I think we're all looking to have, but we don't know who's having it and where is it safe to talk about, because I think they're, in these sort of oppressive systems, are oppressive because they are convoluted and they're made hard to figure out. You can have a lot of shame around like, oh, I don't know this and it's my fault and I just don't. And it's like,
and the thing is, like, nobody tells you this stuff and then you're liable for it. Even sales tax stuff too. It's so complicated to do all that and figure it out. And there's like two huge screenshot forms for each state that's different. And it's like how the hell, And then there have been times for me when I became an S corp, I would call the IRS, ask them questions, call the state, ask them questions. I would get different answers from each of them. And finally, a woman in the state office, like, sent me, she was like, okay, honey, here you go. And she like walked me through the process. But if it wasn't for that, like I was literally going in circles because I couldn't figure out what to do because I wasn't getting straight answers.
Yeah.
And I was getting contradictory answers, So the system is not for us.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's like we're trying to all do the right thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
like,
yeah,
like
absolutely.
trying to figure it out and follow the rules, but you're almost like not allowing me to.
Yes,
yeah.
so let's build the new system together.
Yes,
exactly. Do this.
And that takes what you're doing, Evelyn, which is collaboration and communication and, and asking questions and asking for feedback and all these things. And that's the way to do it, So in that light, I have one question of how, if you're going to charge for it, what would that look like?
Yeah. So yes, like this is a business for us. Eventually we will charge, we want to earn money somehow, right? So there's a couple of thoughts about that. Like the first one is it might be on a monthly subscription. So similar to any of the other like monthly subscriptions that you might have as software. And then likely also we're looking at the different partners that are out there that might be interested in working with us. And so it wouldn't be a charge directly to any of the users yourself, right? It's like, there's likely brokerages that really want you to work in a Sapphire with us. There's probably tax professionals that want you to work with them. And so those are all potential income streams for us as well. We're a little ways off right now of doing that. And also please know that like, if you are a member and you start working with us, like we're always legally, like we're bound to give you ample warning before any of that happens. So there's nothing's going to click on and suddenly you're getting charged for something you didn't know.
Cool. Great. Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Yes. Well, I'll actually follow up with both of you, Jillian and Christine. It sounds like this might be an interesting fit. And again, like I'm happy to spend one-on-one time. Like let's chat for 15 minutes, try to like answer some of the questions that you have just about the business and how to set up all this stuff. Because again, I've been there.
Yeah,
great. Thank you.
I would really love that. And I just, for both of you ladies, as a side note, we can chat maybe via email, but if you'd be interested in setting one of these up for my women's group, I have about 130 women in there, and I bet we could get a handful of women who'd be interested in hopping on and learning about this. So I'd love to help spread the word and support what you're doing. And so yeah, thank you for your time and your insight, and I'd love to connect.
Great.
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jen.
My pleasure. All right. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.